All right, welcome everyone to this meeting of SABR's East Coast Cooperative, a group of 6 chapters in Eastern Canada and the United States who are cooperating to bring you more great presentations. I'm Bruce McClure, the chair of the Clyde Sukeforth Chapter in Maine and New Hampshire, and tonight we have a fascinating speaker for you. Much has been made of the recent and ongoing decline in Major League batting averages, both in their league-wide totals and in the dwindling number of seasons in which players reach the once-esteemed 300 mark. But what of the baseball card 300 hitter? This breed of hitter, which as recently as 2002 included 28 qualified players, is on the brink of extinction. Matthew Prigge charts the history of the baseball card 300 hitter from its peak in 1930 to its thin years in the late 70s and 80s and its resurgence in the 1990s. He also looks forward to what appears to be a grim future for the baseball card 300 hitter. Matthew J. Prigge is a member of the Ken Keltner chapter and a librarian at Marquette University in Milwaukee. He wrote the weekly Brew Crew Confidential column for Milwaukee's Shepherd Express newspaper between 2016 and 2017 and published Opening Day in Milwaukee, the Brewers season starters 1970 to 2022. He presented on the 1995 replacement player spring training at SABR 51 in Chicago last year, and he is here tonight to give his SABR 52 presentation. Matthew Prigge, welcome. How you doing?
Thank you. Very good. Glad to be here.
It's all yours.
I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. And all right, I think we're going. Okay, so as we heard in the introduction, I'm going to be talking about the baseball card 300 hitter and endangered species. This is well, first of all, I'll get to the definition of it here. This is basically an active player who has the qualified number of plate appearances, that's 3,000 or more, and a career batting average of 300 or better. Or to put it another way, a player whose most recent baseball card, a veteran whose most recent baseball card you can flip over and see that nice round 300 or better mark on the backside. The one you see there, that's 1981 Fleer Pete Rose. That is from the era when batting average was so important. A baseball card, put it right up there with the name, team, and position and card number. So I got into this just, as a lot of these SABR presentations probably began, just looking around on Baseball Reference one night, and I realized that the career 300 hitter was something that had really there were a lot fewer career 300 hitters than I thought there would have been. And this is a very recent trend. Here we can see a selection of baseball cards from the 2005, from the year 2005. So these are players who, at the end of 2004, had the qualified number of plate appearances and a career 300 average. That's it's just 20 years ago, and there's 26 different players who hold that career 300 average. As of today, we have just two, Freddie Freeman and Jose Altuve. Altuve at 307, Freeman at 301. I believe those are still their career batting marks. So that got me, this idea that there were only two of these guys left really got me thinking and got me to want to take a look at the historical trends involved in this. So here we see a chart going all the way back to 1901. This shows both the raw number of qualified career 300 hitters as well as the percentage of overall qualified hitters that had a 300 batting average. So, this follows pretty closely along offensive trends in baseball. See a big peak starting at the end of the dead ball era into the 30s and into the 40s. The war years drops off. There's a real dip in the the pitching intensive era of the late 60s into the early 70s. Another little peak back in the steroid era, and then a real tail off in the current day. And that that separation you see there between the blue bars, which is the raw number of 300 hitters, and the green line, you see that separation start to begin around the expansion era. Obviously, more teams means more qualified hitters. So, the raw number of 300 hitters might match what they would have had. You can see in the steroid era there, that raw number matches what they had in the 40s, but again, the overall percentage of qualified hitters is much lower. So what accounts for this decline? Well, part of this is the league-wide decline in batting average. You can see this chart here. That chart's annual league-wide batting average is going back to 1901. You see that peak again into the 20s, into the 30s, and a more recent tail off. But this isn't, I don't think this explains the sole explanation for why this breed of player has begun to vanish. So this here is league-wide batting average overlaid with the percentage of qualified hitters with the career 300 batting average. And again, you see that there is a separation in the more into the expansion era. So the league-wide decline in batting average, I don't think can explain all of this. So of course, to hit 300 for a career, you need to hit 300 in a season or multiple seasons. So what we see here is the number of players who qualified for the batting title who had a 300 batting average in an individual season, and this to accommodate for expansion. The number you see here is the average per team. So even as recently as I think the 2008-2009 season, they were averaging 300 hitter per team in that season. And again, this isn't, you can see that this has fallen off even more. The fall off here is even more pronounced than in batting average. So there are just fewer players who are hitting, fewer players who are producing 300 individual 300 seasons. And if you look at the last couple of data points on there, you notice that's fallen all the way below 0.5 per team. So roughly, we're charting less than 15 qualified hitters with a career 300. With a 300 average per season. This chart goes back to integration. You can only see one other data point on here where there were less than 0.5 300 hitters per team in a season. That was, of course, the year of the pitcher in 1968. We've been underneath that standard now for the last 3 seasons. And it's kind of hard to judge how many 300 hitters they're going to be before the season ends because, players get tired, they tail off at the end. But I forget exactly what the numbers are for this season, but it's, roughly in the same vein. So also, this is the chart I showed just earlier, and I wanted to go back to this because this is something I didn't even notice until I started putting these charts together for my presentation. But I mentioned that separation between the blue bars and the green line. Again, the number of raw 300 career 300 hitters and the percentage of overall qualified hitters. But that separation starts to go away over in the last couple of years of this chart to the point where it's they're almost on the same plane today. So I wanted to look into that as well, and I realized that there are just a lot fewer players qualifying for the batting title in recent seasons. This is again, this is averaged out per team to account for expansion. This is the number of hitters qualified for the batting title per team. Again, the last few data points on there, the last 3 data points, all under 4.5. And that is, if you follow that out, only a few times, a couple other times in the integration era has that number been below 4.5. But again, we're stuck under 4.5 for the last few years here now. So not only are fewer players hitting for a 300 average or better, there are just fewer hitters, plate appearances being spread out more, and there are just fewer hitters reaching those numbers required to qualify for a batting title. And if you stretch this out over a career that pushes that reaching that 3,000 plate appearance milestone later into a player's career when their natural decline might have already begun to occur. This is a chart, speaking to that reaching the 3,000 plate appearance milestone in a career. This chart shows how many active qualified batters there are in a given season. And this does not take expansion into consideration. So you can see that these numbers do jump with the in the late 60s. There's another bump in the 1978 with the Blue Jays and the Mariners. Some other bumps for expansion in the 90s and with 93 and 98. But again, you see a huge decline here recently. Some of this has to do with the COVID season. A lot of players lost a lot of playing time when they only having 60 game seasons. So there is a drop off in there that is due to an external factor. But even looking at the last few pre excuse me, the last few pre-COVID seasons, they're on that number is similar to where it was prior to the most recent expansion. So even before COVID, there were the number of players, active players with 3,000 or more plate appearances. The number was roughly where it was prior to, was roughly where it was when it was still a 28 team league. And that COVID season is going to have this. It's going to take some time for this number to rebound. But even if you just take the raw numbers we've got here, the last few seasons, they haven't the number of qualified hitters active hasn't been that low since the early 1970s. That's 3 expansions ago. That's prior to the designated hitter having a long-term effect. So plate appearances are certainly being spread around more. Obviously, we all know what's happened with batting average. There's just a natural offensive decline. Batting average, I'd say it means less to teams, but I'm not sure that it actually means anything to teams anymore. So all of these factors come in to considering all these factors. I put together this next chart, which is a stat I hadn't ever seen anyone put together before. And this is the combined career batting, excuse me. This is the combined career batting averages for active and qualified players. So, at the years you see there, the matching up with the data, that is all that data is as of the end of that season. So again, anybody with 3,000 or more plate appearances, all their at-bats, all their hits combined, and you can see a very significant drop off over the last 20 years in this number to the degree where to get that 2023 cumulative batting average back to where it was around 2007, you would need to convert about 8,000 outs to hits to get that number back to where it was. And these are massive sample sizes as well. Some of these sample sizes include over 500,000 at bats. And just again, the number of players who've reached that 3,000 plate appearance mark has fallen off considerably. And also just the number of hits included in these groups obviously has fallen off quite a bit too. At the 2008, the most recent peak, the data set contained about 206,000 hits. As of the end of 2023, that same, well, not the same group of players, but the group of qualified hitters, their careers only totaled about 137,000 hits. So we've lost a lot of hits among our veteran players, fewer players reaching this mark, and you get that extreme drop off in career 300 hitters. So that's kind of my, part one, of my the data part of this. And in the middle section here, I just want to take a look at who these players are, because there's a lot of fun stuff you can find in this data. So most of what I'm going to be talking about here just goes back again to 47. Just looking at the integration era, we've had 154 different players to qualify as a baseball card 300 hitter. Of those who are eligible for the Hall of Fame, about 40% have been elected. And once you take into consideration, we'll call them controversial cases, it's roughly about half of these players who have a very strong case for or at least a case for the Hall of Fame that gets people talking. And also, obviously, having a career 300 batting average at some point past 3,000 plate appearances means you got a pretty good chance of carrying that 300 batting average into retirement. About half of the players who are retired of this group did maintain that 300 average through the end of their career. So who are our baseball card 300 kings? Well, three pretty recognizable names. These all three of these guys spent 19 seasons as career 300 hitters. Um, also, incidentally, the top three all-time hit leaders in baseball history. You notice that the asterisk there on Rose. There's actually two ways to become a baseball card 300 hitter. Obviously, you can hold a career 300 average at the end of the season in which you attain your 3,000th plate appearance, or you can, after your 3,000th plate appearance, push your batting average above 300. It's much more common to carry that average to graduate onto the list rather than to raise your average after that 3,000 point. But Rose actually, when he got his 3,000th plate appearance, he was not a career 300 hitter. He had to, it was the year after that, 1968, when he won a batting title, that he bumped his batting average up actually 10 full points to put it up to 305. And carried that through the end of his career. So obviously this group contains some very good hitters, some all-time hitters, but it also includes some names you might not expect and excludes some names that you might expect. We've got 12 guys here up in the top row. I won't bother reading the names. I'm going to assume that you'll be able to spot all those, but the top row, you've got some decent hitters, some names you'd remember. The bottom row, again, some all-time legends. All but one of those guys, a member of the 3,000 Hit Club. All of those guys, Hall of Famers. But I assume you can see where I'm going with this. The top row, each of those guys was at one time a career 300 hitter, and no one in the bottom row was qualified as a 300 hitter after their 3,000th plate appearance. And when I picked these names, I just picked some famous names that I didn't see on all the data I'd pulled. But I didn't realize that of those six guys in the bottom row, even discounting the plate appearance qualification, only Rickey Henderson was ever a 300 hitter at the conclusion of any conclusion of any season. So again, of those six, there's I think it was after Henderson's second year he had a 300 batting average, but none of those other guys carried a career 300 batting average through the end of any season. Even Yastrzemski was the one that really surprised me, and for him, I actually had to. I went back because I wanted to see if at any point in his career Carl Yastrzemski had a 300 career batting average, and it was about a week into his career that he did, for a time, have a career 300 average, but at no point after that. And again, none of those other guys. You can collect all the baseball cards you want of those guys, you will not find one that lists a 300 career batting average on the back. So some of the beasts of the 300 career average are some names you might not, really expect. Julio Franco spent 14 seasons as a career 300 hitter. He finished just shy of the career 300 average at the time he retired. Manny Mota, another guy known for, not a guy considered to be an all-time legend, but when it came to carrying a career 300 batting average, he was very good. 12 seasons at that, and two guys that really got no consideration for the Hall of Fame. Some of the quirks. So those are some of the the big time 300 season guys. Now let's take a look at a couple of the interesting cases who only had one season as a career 300 hitter. Gary Templeton actually had a 300 average after the 1981 season in which he attained his 3,000th plate appearance. He ended up at 271. That's the lowest career average for anybody who ever qualified as a baseball card 300 hitter. And then we got Bob Dillinger, who was the only player to have one season as a baseball card 300 hitter and to retire with a career 300 average. He passed 3,000 plate appearances in 1951, and after that season, he retired to become a construction inspector for the city of Los Angeles. It is exceedingly rare for a player to, after they get to 3,000 plate appearances, to have their career average drop below 300 and then to reattain that mark. There's only a handful of players who have a break in their streaks of 300 career 300 seasons. Joe Torre as one of two players to have dropped below the 300 standard for multiple seasons before reattaining it. He was actually below 300 for his career for 4 years before batting 325 in 1970, and then his MVP season in 71. He hit 363 to push his average for his career back above 300. So, the reasons for this are obvious. The longer you play, the more at bats you attain, the harder it is to move that number one way or the other. And of all the incredible things Barry Bonds did later in his career, one I've never seen mentioned is that he reached a career 300 batting average following the 2004 season. This was after over 11,500 plate appearances. That's a career even for a lot of Hall of Famers. And he managed to raise his career batting average 8 points during those. He didn't retire with a career 300 average, but right near the end, over between 2002 and 2004, he pushed his career average up 8 points, which is really unprecedented. Of course, he batted 358 during those 3 seasons. The only other player who even comes close is Freddie Freeman, who actually last year pushed his career average above 300 after just over 8,000 career plate appearances. No one else has managed to do that with even more than 6,600 plate appearances. So one of the numbers I use here do include the Negro League statistics that are recognized as major league statistics. And the only incidents I was able to find of that really changing the math here on any of the stuff I've been looking at is with Minnie Minoso. Minnie Minoso retired after the 1964 season, thought by all to hold a career 299 batting average. However, with the recent recognition of some of his Negro League playing time, that adding 113 games to his major league statistics, that did push his batting average as of 1964 to an even 300, which would have added a few seasons to his a few seasons in which he had a career 300 average, and then of course, the big goal here, retiring with a 300 average. But of course, as you probably know, Minnie Minoso came back in 1976 and went 1 for 8, which dropped his now recognized career batting average to 29941. If he had gotten one more hit at any point during his career, you'd still carry a 300 batting average. He came back again in 1981, went 0 for 2, dropped his average just a little bit lower. But of course, there's still the possibility of more recognition of Negro League statistics so if we could find a 2 for 3 out there for Minnie Minoso, that would push his average to an even 300. So what we're looking at here is a scatter chart showing all of our baseball card 300 hitters. These are the again, 3,000 or more plate appearances and a 300 average or better, and then charting their career averages by year. And you see some interesting things pop out here. First of all, I'll point out that if you look in the upper left of that graph, you see that kind of twisting collection of blue dots there. That's actually Ted Williams and Stan Musial fighting it out for the better career average. in the latter half of their careers. You'll notice another pretty distinct pattern, almost right in the middle of this, that line of tightly grouped blue dots trending downward a little bit. That's Rod Carew, nearing the end of his career. But the one thing that really stood out to me with this chart is this up here. Almost looks like a constellation hovering above the horizon there. And this is a really interesting group of, that's one player who graduated to or got his 3,000th plate appearance in 1986, and really had a career batting average that no one else since Musial and Williams was able to match, and obviously nobody since has been up in that territory. I mean, this is a 70+ year run here of really being the only guy in this airspace. And you might think it's Tony Gwynn, but that's actually Wade Boggs, who was in the 80s, who I think somehow is still one of the most underrated players of really I think the post-integration era. But his career batting average peaked at 356 in 1988. You'll notice also that year he first shows up on this list, he's got about a 50-point lead on the second place player with in terms of active career batting average. And you can also notice this huge fall off here in recent years. Not only do we have fewer players reaching the 300 mark, but that the active career batting average leader, that number has been dropping with a few little exceptions. It's pretty much been in decline now for the last 16, 17 years. But looking to the future, I want to bump this out just a little bit. This same chart at the conclusion of next season, the 2025 season, should look something like this. You see that red dot show up there just above the 320 mark. This is Luis Arias. A really interesting player, especially in today's context. You notice that dot. That's something that hasn't been seen since Boggs showed up on the scene in '86. Really, a player just in his own stratosphere in this chart. Arias, barring injury, sometime next season he will get his 3,000th plate appearance to officially join this club. But he I think Altuve is probably going to hold his average as long as he plays, but Luis Arias is, he'll be the next keeper of the flame if we want to keep this 300 career average thing going, because he has, I think his career average now is about 322. I just use that number for where he might be at the end of 2025. Of all these guys, there's only been one player who post 3,000 plate appearances had an average of 320 or better and didn't retire with a 300 average. That was Albert Pujols. So a very good chance that he's going to carry that 300 average throughout his career. So looking forward, what do we have? I've put, considering the future of this, I've got these, how many is this? 9 players here. Of course, Altuve and Freeman, they are both already in the club. Again, Altuve, I can't imagine his average will drop low enough, or his career average would drop below 300. Freddie Freeman, he's right on the cusp. That'll probably be tough for him to maintain. So I wouldn't expect Freeman to make. There's a player of his skill set, he can hang on a long time without needing to bat 300. A couple of guys who might rejoin the club, Mike Trout and Trey Turner. Mike Trout, actually, he had a career 300 batting average as of the end of last season. He dropped below this season. I don't need to go into Mike Trout's troubles as of late, but he hasn't hit 300 or better in a full season since 2018. So not looking like he's going to be able to rejoin that list. Trey Turner, actually, he's hitting somewhere in the 3 315, 318 this season, or at least he was when I put this presentation together earlier this month. If he could replicate that next year, he'd probably be able to rejoin the 300 club, but that's a tall order, and who knows if he's going to be able to pull that off. We've got a few guys here who are nearing qualification, that is nearing their 3,000th plate appearance. Arias is pretty much a lock. Jordan Alvarez, he's got a decent shot if he has a big batting average season next year. He could join that club. And Stephen Kwan, he's only at about 1,700 plate appearances for his career, but having a big average season this year, again, very, very near to that. So I'd say he's probably the best of these candidates to push his average over 300. Excuse me. For his career, by the time he to push his average over 300 by the time he reaches 3,000 plate appearances. And then, looking beyond all this, I just wanted to, kind of get out of the qualification for this to see, just how many players out there of any longevity hold a career 300 batting average. So when I was looking this up, I dropped that down to 2,000 plate appearances, to 1,500, to 1,000. And other than Altuve, Freeman, and Arias, I had to go all the way down to 100 career plate appearances to find these two guys, Royce Lewis of the Twins and Xavier Edwards of the Marlins. Actually, I believe Royce Lewis has since I put this together, his career average has fallen below 300. So as we stand right now, I believe there's just 4 players of 100 plate appearances or more with a career average over 300. Again, 100 plate appearances, that's a couple weeks of regular play. But as of earlier this month, Xavier Edwards had a 346 average. He's only played about 60 games in his major league career, but he's been a big average guy throughout his minor league career too. So he might be another guy to watch. Of course, still a long way to go before he would get to 3,000 plate appearances, but he kind of fits that Arias mold of a contact hitter with speed who's going to put a lot of balls in play and get a lot of hits. So possibly, one of the few guys moving forward who might be able to keep this going. So that's all I've got for you. I will stop sharing my screen, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to take them up.
You have a question or a comment for Matthew tonight, please go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button and then hit raise hand, and we will get you in line to speak with our presenter, Matthew Prigge. First up, Molly. Go ahead, Molly. Unmute.
Sorry, my fingers were not fast enough. I was just wondering, like, as a kid, were you a card collector? Did your parents collect cards with you? Like, what started your interest in this? Because I don't think it just was one day you woke up and just said, "Oh, I'm going to do this." Like, what inspired your interest?
Well, I am on the SABR baseball card committee too. So yeah, I've got. I mean, you can't. I don't think the camera angle picks it up, but I've got 20,000 baseball cards behind me as I speak here. But yeah, the baseball card angle just kind of came into it. I wanted to have a term for this thing I had noticed of qualified players with career batting averages over 300. So the card thing was really my just my love of baseball cards, and that I've been collecting baseball cards since I was 6. So it was a natural fit. But yeah, I guess the idea of this didn't really come from baseball cards. It was just more looking at batting averages and finding out that realizing that, wow, nobody hits 300 anymore.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Ryan McClanahan. Ryan, how you doing this evening?
Good, thank you, Matthew. That was fantastic. That was really great.
Thank you.
So I've noticed with modern ball players today, batters, the strikeouts are just amazing. There's so many strikeouts today, and I think half of these guys, if they were playing in the 1970s or 80s, that they'd be sent down to the minor leagues. They wouldn't even get a chance to be up. What do you think is causing all the strikeouts?
I think it's just a change in the philosophy of hitting and of pitching. The torque these guys put on their arms and the incredible break that they get, like it's probably a lot harder to hit those pitches and to put them in play. But if you're trying to throw the ball through a brick wall, you're also it's gonna lead to more walks too. So I think it's players, pitchers going for strikeouts and hitters who are taught from a young age now that strikeouts are the same as any other out, and you can get on if you can get on base. If you get fewer hits but you get more walks, it has the same effect. So I think it's a lot of things like that. And I was trying to think too of like what might turn this around eventually. But barring like a rule change or maybe some very deep philosophical change in the approach to baseball that none of us can see yet, I don't really see how that's gonna be changed. Even the banning the shift in the larger bases, I don't think that's really had much of an effect on batting average. So it would need to be something more severe than that. I don't know, maybe moving the mound back. I'm not sure.
So I have a follow-up question.
Mhm.
Does this affect players like, say, maybe Johnny Pesky, because he had like I think a 307 lifetime batting average back in the 1940s and 50s? Would that now get him into the Hall of Fame, considering that the batting average today is so low?
I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. I wonder how, um, history, or not history because it hasn't happened yet, but how a player like Luis Arias has played through. If he retires with a career 315 batting average, and it's by the time he'd retire, that probably higher than any number that anyone's retired with since I don't even know who. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if voters view these guys who do get higher batting averages, in a time of very low batting averages, if they'll recognize that as something worth honoring. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see. But I don't know. A ground out to me is more interesting than a strikeout, and a base hit is a lot more interesting than a walk. So I think I understand why teams are doing it, because you need to optimize all your player skill sets. But it does make for a less interesting game.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
Fun, Vassy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. You're up, my friend. Go.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I want to say I appreciate your presentation and all the work you put into it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But
Thanks.
to answer the question about Johnny Pesky, I think that the Hall of Fame voters, whoever they be, whether it's a committee for old timers or the writers or whoever the electorate is, I think they have to take into account eras as well, and they're trying to decide basically the best 5% or whatever the number is of the players of the era that was being played. And Pesky's 307 wasn't an outlier in his during. There are lots of players that had batting averages comparable to that. And I think that somebody carrying a 307, if they played from 2020 to 2030, probably would have a considerable chance, just because it seems like it's so much rarer. I mean, of
Yeah.
that, the voters.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, just how, because I think a part of this too is that I assume teams don't even look at batting average anymore when they're evaluating players. And Luis Arias has been traded twice in the past 2 years, three
Yep.
times. I don't, went to Miami, and now he's out in San Diego. So he's a name people know, but I don't know if he's necessarily somebody who even his batting average being such an outlier, I don't know if teams value that the same as they would have like when Boggs is all of a sudden at a 350 career average and no one else is close. So yeah, and just to get back to the to illustrate my my lifelong affair with baseball cards, I see a Sandy Koufax card just past your shoulder that I actually have on a shelf right over there. So yeah, there we go.
That's those are my conversation pieces of players that I particularly loved during my childhood. I want people to look at them and ask me questions. Nobody ever does.
Oh well.
I walked through here. We were having my grandchildren over for a week, and I walked past here, and this couch that I'm sitting on folds out into a bed, and she was sleeping here. And I walked by, she was like staring at the cards, and I wanted to stop and say something to her, and I thought, no, I'll just let her be looking at the cards and let her decide if she wants to ask me a question. Never did.
Oh.
But she was really studying them. I could tell. It was like she had her back to me. She didn't know I was seeing her at all. But yeah, this is the baseball room, and this is where one of the kids has to sleep when they come and visit.
Very cool.
Alex Stays has a couple of good comments in the chat. Pesky's OPS plus is 107. So he's 900th all time, apparently, in OPS plus. So I can see why his Hall of Fame candidacy might be a little bit shaky, but he did ask earlier, and I thought this was great. Are many high batting averages correlated with unlikability? I think yes, in a lot of cases, but that's just me.
Well, everybody loved Tony Gwynn, so I don't know.
True. It's a good point.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for having me. I do need to get out of here, but yeah, thanks for taking the time to sit and listen. And yeah, I'm glad I could share what at least I thought was really interesting. All right. Thank you.
We'll let Matthew pop off. Have a great night.
You too.
All right, next week, Monday, September 2nd, Alan Cohen will be with the Clyde Sukeforth Chapter to give his Malloy Conference presentation. Josh Gibson blazes a trail through big league ballparks, 1930 to 1946. Our next East Coast Collaborative special presentation will be Wednesday, September 9th with another fellow SABR member, Stephen Greens. Each program will start at 7 p.m. Eastern and is available in the SABR events calendar. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching this, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community, offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom. SABR boasts more than 35 different research communities, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information, go to sabr.org/join today. Great presentation, huh, guys? That was a lot of fun. All right, well, let's get everybody out of here, and we're going to see everybody next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks.